Elliot Graves stood at the tall glass window of his mansion, staring out at the rain-soaked garden that glimmered under the pale morning light. The world outside looked calm, almost peaceful, but inside his chest, everything felt tight and restless. 2 years had passed since his wife, Mara, had died, and yet the house still carried her absence in every quiet corner. The soft echo of her laughter seemed to drift through the halls whenever the wind slipped through the open windows. Behind him, the faint sound of coughing broke the stillness. His 8-year-old daughter, Iris, lay curled up on the couch under a thick blanket, her small body trembling with weakness. "Papa," she called softly, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Elliot turned quickly, forcing a smile onto his face as he walked toward her. "I'm here, little star," he said, kneeling beside her and brushing her hair back gently. Iris tried to smile, but it faded as she closed her eyes again. The doctor's words from the night before echoed in Elliot's mind. Her immune system is fragile. Every delay matters. He nodded to himself, determined to be strong, even as fear quietly wrapped around his heart. In the kitchen, the new housekeeper, Naomi, moved carefully as she prepared a simple breakfast of warm porridge and herbal tea. She had only been working for the Graves family for 6 months, yet she already knew every sound of the house, every creak in the floorboards, and every sigh that came from Iris's tired chest. Naomi was young, with tired eyes and a gentle smile that seemed to hide a lifetime of struggles. She carried the tray into the living room and knelt beside Iris. "Good morning, my sunshine," Naomi whispered, placing the bowl on the table. Iris's eyes opened, and for a moment, a real smile appeared. "You came again," Iris said softly. Naomi laughed quietly. "Of course I did. I promised I would always be here when you wake up." Elliot watched from a distance, his face unreadable. He told himself that Naomi was just doing her job, yet something about the way Iris leaned into her made his chest tighten. He turned away, heading toward his study, where business calls and important papers waited for him, pulling him back into the cold world he understood best. The study was silent except for the ticking of a heavy clock on the wall. Elliot sat behind his large wooden desk, flipping through documents, when his phone rang and then went silent as the call dropped. He sighed in frustration and leaned back in his chair. That was when he noticed the drawer slightly open. His eyes narrowed. He stood up and pulled it out fully. The envelope where he always kept emergency cash was lighter than it should have been. His jaw tightened as anger flared inside him. "Naomi," he muttered under his breath. He stormed out of the room, his footsteps loud and sharp against the polished floor. He found her in the hallway, holding Iris's hand as she slowly walked toward the garden for some fresh air. "What do you think you're doing?" Elliot snapped. Naomi froze, her face going pale. "Sir, I was just—" "Don't lie to me," he interrupted, pointing a finger at her. "My money is missing, and you're the only stranger in this house." Iris looked up at her father, confused and frightened. "Papa, Naomi didn't do anything bad," she whispered. But Elliot's anger had already built a wall around his heart. Naomi swallowed hard, her hands trembling as she gently let go of Iris and stepped forward. "I did take the money," she admitted softly, her voice barely steady. Elliot's eyes burned with disbelief and rage. "How dare you?" he said. "I trusted you in my home, near my daughter." Naomi lifted her head, tears filling her eyes. "Sir, I didn't do it for myself. Iris was struggling to breathe last night. You were in a meeting, and your phone was off. The medicine was finished. I panicked." She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a crumpled receipt. "I ran to the pharmacy. They said she needed it immediately." Iris tugged at Elliot's sleeve. "Papa, it helped me. I felt better after she gave it to me." Elliot looked at the receipt, then at Naomi, but pride and hurt kept his face cold. "You still stole from me," he said sharply, "and that cannot be forgiven." Naomi closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek, knowing what his words meant. "I want you to leave," Elliot said firmly, his voice echoing through the hallway. Naomi nodded slowly, her shoulders slumping as if a heavy weight had been placed on her back. Iris began to cry, weakly clinging to Naomi's hand. Don't go, she pleaded. Please don't leave me. Naomi knelt down and wiped Iris's tears. My little angel, you have to be brave, she whispered. Elliot turned away, unable to watch. That was when Iris suddenly swayed and collapsed into Naomi's arms. Iris! Elliot shouted, rushing forward as fear finally broke through his anger. Naomi called for help as Elliot scooped his daughter up, his hands shaking. The house filled with panic as they rushed to the hospital. Hours later, a doctor approached Elliot, his face serious but calm. Your daughter is stable, he said. The medicine she received last night made the difference. Without it, we might have lost her. Elliot's world stopped. The words hit him harder than any insult ever could. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands, realizing the truth he had been too proud to see. The hospital hallway smelled of disinfectant and quiet prayers. Elliot sat rigidly on a narrow bench, his expensive coat draped over his knees, his eyes fixed on the closed door of Iris's room. Naomi stood a few steps away, her hands folded tightly in front of her, unsure whether she was allowed to stay or expected to leave. The silence between them felt heavier than any argument. Finally, Elliot spoke, his voice low and strained. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Naomi looked up, surprised by the softness in his tone. I tried, sir, she said gently. I called you 3 times. Your phone was off. Elliot exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. I thought my meetings were more important than everything else, he admitted bitterly. From inside the room, Iris's weak voice called out, Papa? Elliot jumped to his feet and rushed in, Naomi following slowly behind. Iris lay in the hospital bed, her small chest rising and falling steadily now, a thin tube resting beneath her nose. Her eyes opened when she saw them. You both came, she whispered. Elliot knelt beside her, taking her hand carefully. I'm here, little star. I'm not going anywhere. Naomi smiled softly from the foot of the bed. Iris turned her head toward her. Naomi, don't let Papa send you away, she said. Elliot's throat tightened. Why do you care so much? He asked, not unkindly. Iris thought for a moment. Because when I'm scared, she tells me stories. When I'm cold, she sings Mama's song. She makes the house feel warm again. Elliot closed his eyes briefly, feeling the truth of her words sink deep into his chest. Later that evening, the doctor returned with a clipboard in hand. Your daughter will need consistent care and regular medication, he explained. But she's strong. Emotionally, too. He glanced at Naomi. Support like this helps more than people realize. Elliot stood there, silent, his pride slowly cracking. After the doctor left, he turned to Naomi. I accused you because it was easier than admitting I failed my daughter, he said quietly. Naomi shook her head. Sir, I didn't help Iris because it was my job. I helped her because she feels like family. The word family hung in the air between them, fragile and powerful at the same time. When they returned home the next day, the mansion felt different. The cold halls seemed softer, the sunlight warmer. Elliot watched Naomi help Iris settle onto the couch, fluffing pillows and tucking a blanket around her shoulders. He cleared his throat. Naomi, he said. She turned, expecting more instructions or perhaps another dismissal. Instead, he continued, You're not leaving this house. Her eyes widened. Sir? Elliot took a deep breath. I don't need another employee. I need someone who cares about my daughter the way you do. Iris clapped her hands weakly. That means she stays forever, she said with a small laugh. Naomi covered her mouth, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks. That night, they sat together in the living room, something that hadn't happened since Mara's death. Elliot asked Naomi about her life for the first time. She spoke about her sick mother in a small village, about dreams of going back to school, about how hard it was to believe in good things when life had been so heavy. Elliot listened carefully. I can help, he said simply. Naomi shook her head. You've already helped by trusting me. Elliot looked at Iris, who had fallen asleep between them. Trust is something I need to learn again, he admitted. Weeks passed, and Iris slowly grew stronger. She walked in the garden again, holding both Elliot's and Naomi's hands. Look, she said one morning, pointing to a butterfly resting on a flower. It's not afraid anymore. Elliot smiled. Maybe it learned the world isn't always cruel. Naomi laughed softly. Or maybe it found people who protect it. Elliot glanced at Naomi, understanding the meaning behind her words. That afternoon, he made a phone call that would change her life. He arranged for Naomi's mother to receive surgery in a private hospital, covering every cost. When Naomi heard the news, she couldn't speak at first. She fell to her knees in the garden, crying openly for the first time since she arrived at the mansion. "I don't know how to thank you," she said through her tears. Elliot helped her up gently. "Stay," he replied. "Not as someone who cleans my floors, but as someone who stands with my family." Iris hugged Naomi tightly. "You're my angel," she said proudly. Naomi laughed and cried at the same time, holding the little girl close. The house began to fill with new sounds, laughter in the kitchen, music in the evenings, conversations that didn't end in silence. Elliot found himself coming home earlier, turning off his phone during dinner, listening to Iris talk about her day and Naomi share stories from her childhood. "Mama would like this," Iris said one night, looking at the empty chair at the table. Elliot swallowed hard but smiled. "Yes," he said. "She would." One afternoon, Elliot handed Naomi a small envelope. Inside was a letter of enrollment to a local college. "You said you wanted to study," he said. "Now you can." Naomi stared at the paper, shaking her head in disbelief. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. Elliot shook his head. "You earned it the moment you chose my daughter's life over your own safety." Iris raised her hand dramatically. "Does this mean I get to brag that my angel is also a student?" They all laughed, the sound echoing warmly through the halls. Months later, Iris stood in the garden, stronger and brighter, chasing butterflies under the open sky. Elliot watched from the porch, Naomi beside him. "I used to think power meant control," Elliot said quietly. "Now I know it means care." Naomi nodded. "And family isn't who you're born with," she added. "It's who you choose to stand beside." Iris ran back to them, wrapping her arms around both. "Then choose me forever," she said with a grin. Elliot laughed, pulling both of them into a hug as the sunlight washed over the mansion, no longer a house of echoes, but a home filled with healing, love, and second chances. The days that followed felt lighter, as though the mansion itself had learned how to breathe again. Elliot began waking earlier, no longer driven by business calls, but by the soft sound of Iris humming in her room. One morning, he knocked gently on Naomi's door. "I made breakfast," he said awkwardly when she opened it. Naomi raised an eyebrow, smiling. "Should I be worried?" Elliot chuckled, a sound that still felt strange to him. In the kitchen, Iris sat at the table, swinging her legs happily. "Papa burned the toast," she announced proudly. Elliot pretended to bow. A heroic sacrifice for my family," he said. Naomi laughed, and for a moment, the kitchen filled with a simple joy that money could never buy. That afternoon, Elliot took Iris and Naomi into the city, something he had not done since Mara was alive. They walked through a small park where children played and street musicians filled the air with soft melodies. Iris clapped along, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Naomi bought her a bright ribbon from a nearby stall and tied it gently into her hair. "There," she said. "Now you look like a princess." Iris shook her head. "No," she replied seriously. "I look brave." Elliot felt his chest swell with pride as he watched the two of them walk ahead, hand in hand. That evening, Elliot received a call from his office, a deal that once would have demanded his full attention. He looked at the phone, then at Iris and Naomi setting the table. "Tell them I'll call tomorrow," he said firmly. Naomi paused, surprised. "You're not going to take it?" Elliot shook his head. "Some things are worth more than contracts." Iris beamed. "Does that mean I win?" she asked. Elliot laughed. "You always do." They sat down together, sharing stories and laughter, the walls of the mansion glowing warmly under the soft light. Late that night, Naomi found Elliot standing by the window again, just as he had in the beginning. But this time, his face was calm instead of tense. I used to think this house was proof of everything I had achieved, he said quietly. Now I see it's only meaningful because of who's inside it. Naomi nodded. Homes aren't built with walls, she said. They're built with moments. Elliot smiled at her, grateful for the simple wisdom she carried. On a warm morning months later, Iris stood in front of her school, holding Elliot's hand on one side and Naomi's on the other. Promise you'll both be here when I come back, she said seriously. Elliot knelt beside her. Every day, he promised. Naomi squeezed her hand. Always. Iris ran off toward her classmates, turning back once to wave. Elliot and Naomi watched her go, their shoulders brushing as the future opened gently before them. Not perfect, not easy, but full of hope, trust, and a family they had chosen together. The school bell rang in the distance as Iris disappeared through the open gates, her laughter trailing behind her like a ribbon in the wind. Elliot and Naomi remained standing there for a moment longer than necessary, as if neither wanted to be the first to walk away. She's growing so fast, Elliot said quietly. Naomi nodded. Every day feels like a small miracle. They turned back toward the car, the morning sun warming their faces. On the drive home, Elliot spoke about his plans to reduce his workload, something he had never considered before. I don't want to miss her life, he said. Naomi smiled softly. You already chose the right path. Now you just have to keep walking it. Back at the mansion, the house felt unusually quiet without Iris's voice filling the rooms. Naomi opened the windows, letting fresh air and birdsong drift inside. Elliot wandered into the living room and noticed an old photo frame on the shelf, Mara's smiling face frozen in time. He picked it up carefully. I used to be afraid of remembering, he admitted. Naomi joined him. Memories don't hurt because they're bad, she said gently. They hurt because they mattered. Elliot placed the frame back down, but this time, he did not turn it away. He let it face the room, a quiet sign that the past had a place in their present. That evening, Iris came home bursting with stories about her new teacher and a boy who shared his lunch with her. She spread her school papers across the table proudly. Look, Papa, I drew you and Naomi, she said, pointing at a colorful picture of 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Elliot laughed, a sound filled with warmth. You made me very tall, he teased. Iris grinned. You are tall in my heart. Naomi pressed a hand to her chest, touched by the simple honesty of the child's words. Later, as Naomi helped Iris get ready for bed, Elliot lingered in the doorway, watching quietly. Read the butterfly story, Iris insisted. Naomi opened the book and began, her voice calm and soothing. The words floated through the hallway, wrapping the house in a peaceful stillness. When Iris finally drifted off to sleep, Elliot whispered, Thank you. Naomi looked up. For what? For bringing light into a place that forgot how to shine, he replied. Naomi smiled, feeling the weight and meaning of his words. Weeks turned into months, and small traditions began to form. Sunday walks in the garden, evening tea on the balcony, and movie nights where Iris always fell asleep halfway through. The mansion no longer felt like a monument to wealth, but a space shaped by shared moments. One evening, Iris looked up at both of them and asked, Does family mean you never leave? Elliot and Naomi exchanged a glance. Family means you always come back, Elliot said. Iris nodded thoughtfully, satisfied with the answer. On a quiet night under a sky full of stars, the 3 of them sat outside wrapped in blankets, pointing out constellations. Iris rested her head on Naomi's shoulder, her other hand holding Elliot's. I think Mama can see us, she whispered. Elliot looked up at the sky, his eyes shining. I think she's proud, he said. Naomi squeezed Iris's hand gently. The world around them felt still and kind, and in that moment, they understood that their story was not about loss or wealth or mistakes. It was about the simple, powerful choice to love, again and again, even when it felt hard.